What are your immediate thoughts when I say the word mining? Is it pollution, environmental damage, vast dusty excavation sites? And if I add the word sustainability, as in sustainable mining, does it feel like a contradiction? That's exactly what we'll explore in today's episode. And I can assure you there is so much more to this topic than you might think. My guest is Donna Kitsos, an experienced and deeply insightful voice in the world of energy, innovation, and sustainability. Based in Singapore, Donna has spent over 2 decades working at the intersection of global markets, venture, and climate-focused technologies. With a background in finance and a career that spans coal trading to investing in technologies designed to replace coal, she's someone who sees complexity not as a barrier, but as an invitation to think differently. In this conversation, we explore what mining really is and what it isn't, and how innovation, circular systems, and cross-sector collaboration are reshaping a widely misunderstood industry. And before we get started, I just have to thank Holly Smith, a previous guest who introduced me to Donna. And this is what I absolutely love about podcasting. One connection leads to another, and it just keeps going. So thank you so much, Holly, for this introduction. And now I hope you enjoy my conversation with Donna Kitsos. Welcome, Donna, all the way from Singapore.
Well, thanks for having me.
It's a great opportunity to talk about this topic, and I think, and thank you so much to Holly, who's also been on my podcast, connecting us and thinking that your knowledge and your experience would be interesting for this podcast, and it definitely is. So you have this really fascinating career journey from trading coal to investing in technologies that might actually replace coal. So was there a light bulb moment, or was it more like this slow change over the years? So maybe you can just take us through how that all connects, where you're coming from and where you are now.
No, absolutely. And I'm probably maybe backtracking on that side. My background, I grew up in Houston, so oil and gas was on my back door. And I'm a finance major. And I've always kind of taken the idea of taking the path less traveled. While all
Mm,
my friends in the finance industry went into banking and consulting, um, I'm always questioning different areas, and I found the world of the natural gas and oil industry, and realize how complex things are. Our systems, our everyday life, is based on all these integrated, interdependent systems, and so this kind of was my catch into everything, and this is kind of where I started. And but to understand it, not coming from engineering, is actually diving into it and understanding how things operate. Because a lot of times
mm,
we hear about our systems and like our computer right now, it's easy to put on our laptop, but where is everything coming from?
mm,
I like to joke with my children sometimes. Where does milk come from? No, it doesn't come from just a grocery store. There's so
mm,
many layers that are complex behind it. So for me to understand how the industry works is really actually learning how everything operates. So that kind of where I got into natural gas and then moved into the power industry. Now transitioning into coal, I moved over to Europe from the U.S. and so in that I was working for an energy provider, a Dutch German energy provider, and that was kind of my inflection point. Saying, sorry, I'm going back to your question. So in terms of the coal side of things, it was, you know, sustainability has always been at my core of my work. And I guess, like when you put those two together, coal and then sustainability, it's very much like,
mm,
how does that really fit? Now, working for an energy provider, sustainability was always at our core. We were always looking at how to reduce our footprint, how to make things more efficient, how less invasive to the environment, how to do things more economically viable for the energy provider. So we were always looking at different alternative materials for our power plants. So this was very much part of, I would say, innovation and sustainability before it became just what now everyone's talking about it. It was before, this was actually part of our life. So I think that,
Mm.
when you talk about finance industries, when you talk about, the good, the bad, it's actually it's about like-mindedness and about bridging those gaps and understanding the core of what you're doing. And so that I don't look at that, what I'm doing now in terms of innovation and looking at energy, and sustainable mining in this sense is replacing coal. We need many solutions. We need,
Mm.
I don't believe there's you put all eggs in one basket. This is kind of where we are in this world, in this global world that we're all connected, is that we need many solutions. And it's not about only these targets that these ambitions that we've set for 2030, 2050. It's actually right now. I mean, right now I'm sitting in this cold aircon room because I'd be just sweating like nonstop. I mean, we're seeing, natural disasters, and, it's beyond just say mining per se. It's about how do we actually change our systems, and that comes down to the minerals. I mean,
Yeah.
the materials that we need for our adaptation of our, of our world, of our living systems, and for resilience and, and mitigation moving forward, is actually comes down to the enablers that are providing these solutions, these renewable energy, these digital, these infrastructure type, it comes down to mining. And
Yeah.
there's kind of the coin term, they say, if it's not farmed, it's mined. So
True.
everything comes from the ground, right? And so for
Yeah.
that, this is where mining is. Um, and I guess in the scale of things, this is kind of where I don't look at that. I've gone from coal to, looking at innovation, looking at solutions. This has always been the core of what our energy systems are the basis of. It's a complex,
Mm.
it's full of many, many nuances embedded into it. And so our supply chains, it's just not just digging a hole in the ground. And I think that's where narratives and the awareness of our world and our connection to the environment and to our nature is very important these days. Because, we can easily just buy an EV right now, but to understand what goes into those EVs, electric vehicles, it's complex. I mean, I was trying to
Mm.
with my 6-year-old son, who's obsessed with getting an iPhone, which is an absolutely no anyway. And we just, I said, "Do you understand how an iPhone is made?" And so we did a little research, and I believe it was, 46 different minerals.
Yeah. Wow.
You
Yes.
know, it's
I bet most people don't think about this.
no.
No.
So that's yeah, that's I look at it as just a progression of what I've always done in the energy and commodities world is the innovation side of things, and mining is, another part of our supply chains.
Mm.
And actually mining touches not just exploration. There's so many different, you know, many different areas within mining.
Yeah, so this last leg then, taking you to where you are today in Singapore and working on, among other things, sustainable mining. How did that happen?
Well, that's a very good question. Thanks for that. Yeah, especially in Singapore, where it's a beautiful place. It's very clean.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
environment, the government and actually Asia in general is putting so much money into climate initiatives, into carbon reduction. And there's so many different. But when you bring mining in, you don't see anything here. You don't see any of these natural resources that are, being extracted, being, processed. Yet Indonesia is right around the corner and
Mm.
full of natural resources. So why Singapore? It's an amazing place to be at.
Yeah.
And given that there's a lot of natural resources in Asia, and our systems are connected, it's a good global hub. I call it like the Switzerland of Asia.
Right.
You know, it's
Yeah.
it's a great place for financial and organizations to be here, companies to be here. So,
Mm.
why mining here? You've got Australia right on the corner, 4 or 5 hours away in
Mm.
West Australia. So it's a great point to bridge, the opportunities within Asia as well as the rest of the world. And given that Asia the demand moving forward. It's just amazing the opportunities for Asia moving forward. It's full of
Yeah.
embedded with natural resources, yet is growing. I think the GDP growth is 6 to 7%, maybe it's 7 to 8. So it's 7 to 8,
Mm.
6 to 7, whatever the number may be, growth
Mm.
and opportunity. And what Asia positions itself in terms of the opportunity is that it can look at elsewhere of more developed economies, more developed nations, and learn from those. We don't have to
Mm.
reinvent the wheel. You can look and see what's worked, what's not, um,
Mm.
and build on that and build on those opportunities. So this is,
Yeah.
it's been a great experience being based here, but also connecting with the rest of the world, like yourself, over this call.
Mm, absolutely. Yeah, it's so convenient these days. It's like distance isn't a problem, but it's really interesting how, and I will get back to that because I'm interested in how being in Asia and in Singapore maybe also changes your perspectives on different things. Like you see the world from a different angle, perhaps. But before we go there, you kind of mentioned it when you talked about coal and sustainability, because that's like a combination that most people think is like, no. And mining also, like mining often makes people think about damage to the environment, but there's a lot more to that story. Can you explain why, and you have mentioned it with the iPhone, but why is mining still so necessary in today's world?
Well, when people hear mining, they picture a pit or a tunnel, and
Yes.
you watch the Minecraft movie. It's a shovel and that.
Yeah.
Mining's
Yeah.
beyond that. It's everything before and after a rock is pulled. It's the beginning of a supply chain, and it can be this global, deeply connected system that actually
Mm.
can be regenerative. So this is where the sustainability part comes in play, because it's not just digging a hole and grabbing a rock and then throwing away everything. There's many different ways that mining comes into play, but it's deeply, deeply embedded with complexity.
Mm.
You have to extract. You have to first, actually, if you want to break it down, to a mine nowadays takes about 16 to 18 years to government regulations, exploration. But
Mm.
you have the crushing, the grinding, the concentrate, the separating, the refining, end of use. So
Mm.
there's so many different steps within mining. So this is kind of where I see that a lot of times the perception of what mining is, it is so much bigger than what we see in a book or what we see,
Yeah.
that's portrayed. And then it goes down to the narrative. It's an industry that's embedded with so much complexity and some bad baggage. It's been, there's at the end of the mine, when you have a process, there's a part of it, the waste, the tailings. The tailings is actually stored, and it's waste, it's sludge, and it's dangerous
Mm.
to societies. And in the past, there's been some accidents. And so this is, with these kind of, you know, exploration type of industries, the perception, becomes, one life is too many for something to
Mm.
happen. Given the complexities and the challenges within this industry, we're so bad at the narrative. I mean, even now, me
Yes.
trying to explain that,
Yeah.
we're just, it's really hard.
Yeah.
And but yet, it's the first to point a finger is the mining companies. Actually, it needs everyone. This is where collaboration really and as the public private sector now and the partnerships is so important in this stage of life. And remove all the geopolitical, noise going on, but the trust and the alliances, and that's so integral to actually for our, decarbonization, for to make your systems, be efficient, be using our resources wisely, just not endlessly. I guess that's more the point. We need to design our systems that just don't extract value, but also regenerate. So that's making
Mm.
decisions with both long-term impact, but short-term realities as well. I think that's
Mm.
very much. So mining is reducing the waste and emissions, minimizing harm to communities and ecosystems, but in redefining on how we mine, how our materials are sourced, processed, reused, and being transparent. Because I read, actually trying to break down like how a pencil was made, the complexity of actually just making a pencil. It's not, there's so many different processes, and to find
Mm.
to actually to account and the traceability, let alone the whole footprint and the value chain that's involved, is, it's just complex. But
Mm.
we, with the mining, it's about responsibility and balance and the continuity. So I think, this is kind of the messaging that we have to bring forward, and realizing that it's not just the mining companies, that it's actually the industrials, it's people, actually with us ourselves. It's the conscious decisions of recycling. Recycling is a
Mm.
very much big part of our, of mining. And that goes down to even the waste. So a lot of the technologies now are looking at how secondary resources. So it's we had a program that was actually looking at how we could mine with waste. So it's actually taking like the tailings and actually cleaning up the water, but also taking the minerals out of it, rather than just taking it
Right.
in our land
Yeah.
again, and
Yeah.
bringing that water back. So there's no danger to the communities, and yet creating value because you're actually extracting the minerals. So I think like one of them is like rare earths, right? There's
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. Yes, we hear so much about the rare earth minerals.
And I'm not gonna even try to say these minerals, because if you can say them, it's crazy, like, but these rare earth minerals, it's not like there's a rare earth mine just right there. You know, when you actually extract an ore, it's embedded with other minerals. So this is where mining is these innovations are coming into play, because rare earths, there's lots of them, but you only need a little bit. But to get
Mm.
those rare earths, it's very complex. But we need those. We need it
Mm.
for we need it for the healthcare industry, we need it for EVs, the magnets, we
Mm.
need it for defense. And with it right now, it's not about just extracting, it's the processing. And right now, a lot of the processing is concentrated in one big area. And due to the geopolitical complications right now, or
Mm.
I guess the challenges right now, this is really um, having other countries or places rethink how our value chains are integrated. And so this is where innovation comes into play, of
Mm.
how we can mine differently. And so this is, yeah, rare earths is a very, it's a large part of our foundation of a lot of our products, in terms of even the earbuds that you're wearing right now,
Mm.
right? You can't just change the magnet to, it'll be less, without using the rare earths at this stage. Now look, I hope that one day, that's also another part of mining, is actually finding alternative materials
Yes.
rather than concentrate specific, and that's, hopefully that will change.
Yeah.
I don't believe that it's competition. We need many different solutions,
Mm.
and that comes down to, rare earths, but also that they're practical and they make sense. Because if you look at mining right now, when we're finding like copper, right? Copper right now, like the amount that is extracted versus what we need right now is actually low. But the ore quality is that we're at the new reserves that we're coming that are being extracted are actually low. And so with that, the processing has to be rethought as well, because you can't actually process the right amount. You'll have to actually extract a lot more rocks on the ground, or whatever the
Mm.
method may be, to actually get the high concentration that you do need.
Right.
So these are different like complexities that are also embedded into this.
Yeah. So when because you work, your company Prospect Innovation, and you see a lot of new mining technology, and you have this really interesting collaboration with the World Economic Forum and their platform called Uplink. And to the listeners, Uplink is a digital platform to source innovative solutions for the world's most pressing problems. It says on their website. So do you have like examples of how new innovation really can change the mining industry and the parts of it which is needs to be changed?
Absolutely. And with Prospect, we invest in early stage technology. So it's
Mm.
usually it's proof of concept, but yet has not piloted. So with some of these solutions, they're quite complex. They're there's a lot of timeline to actually get them to scale. And so this is where, we find that you get a lot of the non-diluted capital from governments or whatnot in terms of getting them off the ground or from academic, but
Mm.
then the missing middle of trying to get them to be able to get to the scale to get commercialized
Yes.
is a huge bottleneck in this.
Yeah.
A lot of the solutions are there, and oftentimes it's not the best solution that's made it to the end. It's actually being able to having the right partners and having the right support. So that's where we come into play, is actually tapping into the ecosystem, because we need not just one voice, we need
Mm.
multiple stakeholders involved, and that's across the value chain. Support can come in many different forms. Obviously, financial capital is very important, but that's not everything.
Mm.
And the cost of some of these innovations are quite expensive, the capex and the opex, and the time to scale is quite a large commitment. So you actually need a lot of more catalytic capital to kind of be able to work with them to get them to the point. So some of these technologies take many years,
Mm.
and a lot of different testing and scaling, but also working with beyond just a mining company. A lot of it's industrial. So you're seeing a lot of the automobile industry actually tapping in across the supply chain. So not only just providing that Tesla to you, or providing that whatever the electric vehicle be, they're actually now working within the supply chain too, in the processing to into the actual the minerals that are needed for their technologies.
Yeah.
So, and that's a lot with, having the right partnerships, having the right offtake agreements. And so actually working with manufacturers and exploration companies. A lot of the technologies now are much, much more, I would say, I guess, called convergence. So actually taking the blended of, AI with synthetic biology. And so, that could be a whole nother session as well,
Mm.
bringing the AI for good and involved. AI is a big part of not only just mining, but a lot of the processes. But on the other side, you have a lot of the data centers, and that's also now
Yeah.
requiring procurement.
That's a big
It's hard
topic
to
as
understand,
well. Yeah.
you go down this rabbit hole. Like
Yes.
there's so many challenges, but that also brings that there's so many different opportunities. And I
Exactly.
think
Yeah. So, do you have any like concrete examples of solutions you might, and you mentioned the barriers, but that maybe are closer to being realized?
Sure. So I guess to your listeners, that mining, without getting too complicated into some of the solutions. Um, so one of the solutions that was part of our first cohort, um, I'd say that it's much more relatable because it's more biology enabled mineral recovery. So say in right next to a nickel mine, there's all this land, but you can't farm it, because it's so rich in minerals that it's actually not able to be used
Mm.
to for communities. So what they've done is they've hyper accumulated these plants, and they're able to refine these plants that they can plant into the ground next to the mines or the land that's inhabitable, and actually extract the nickel
Right.
from the ground.
Oh,
So actually, it's a different way to mine.
yeah.
So these are the technologies that I find actually very, very interesting, because it's not the straight off the shelf type of solution. Is looking at something that, how can we mine differently? So
Yeah.
this is one of the solutions I would say, is that it's actually extracting the minerals, so it's regenerating the land and also providing the minerals, and it's less energy intensive. So
Interesting. Yes.
another one is actually, the convergence of what I was mentioning about AI and synthetic biology. They're engineering microbes. So think of it like your gut. When you take
Mm.
those probiotics, and it's cleaning up your gut. So they're actually now engineering these microbes, and that can selectively absorb minerals from low ore quality. So they can actually, like, whether it be nickel or copper, and from low grade ores or tailings. And so this is another way, and that's actually, and the AI component is actually getting the microbes a bit smarter. So to actually be able to tailor, different scenarios. So this is another one.
Mm.
Another solution I would say is looking at precision mining. So,
Mm.
instead of just blasting, actually
Yeah.
doing in situ mining, so these different type of processing of actually taking out extracting the minerals. If you look at, DLE, so lithium is another one where you could either come from rocks or actually direct lithium extraction, which is very much like the oil and gas industry.
Yeah.
So you're seeing a lot of the oil and gas majors that have been involved in that actually now exploring the DLE because it's a different way to extract it, which is very similar to that industry.
Yeah.
So actually, some of the solutions are already out there. It's, the product market fit isn't there,
Mm.
or that it needs to be refined to the local climate. And when I say like,
Mm.
so I think the localized, some of these localized technologies, have to be are very different depending on where the mine is or where the different, location is. So a lot of the solutions now are looking at how to, instead of having a smelter, smelters, for most people would not know that they're energy intensive, they're highly polluting. So different ways to actually process the minerals.
Mm.
Looking at different solutions of through electro winning and different types of methods to refine these minerals.
Interesting. So it's a lot of kind of out of the box way of thinking, because when you first think about, okay, how can we make this more sustainable? You think about like the way you normally think about mining, and how can we do that in a different way?
No, and there's not, and also it's not a one size fits all. There's different metals, different ore types, different environments and economic needs. So like it's just not a straight journey from discovery to end use. There's so many different parts embedded to it. And also the other part of it is this circular loop.
Yes.
So what one industry or one sector may consider waste can be a resource for another. So this is actually being able to look at different ways to actually integrate all those different systems together.
Mm.
And so when you talk about mining, what I think one of the challenges has always been, it's been a very siloed approach in moving forward. And this is kind of where we are at this moment, where actually mining is across all verticals.
Mm.
You look at industry, you look at aviation, you look at healthcare,
Yeah.
it touches so many,
Yes.
water,
Yeah.
so if you give me any, I mean, I always challenge someone, give me something that mining hasn't touched.
Yeah. I can see
So
that.
that's
Yes.
and recycling as well,
Mm.
recycling, that's also another one, the separating and the mineral with, especially in terms of like the first solar panels that are now having to be replaced,
Mm.
or, batteries coming from cars or from phones or whatnot. How do we actually reuse the materials that were actually made?
Mm.
Um, so that's very much part of mining.
Yeah. Oh, it's a big, big, big area. A lot, and you said it, a lot of challenges, but that also makes a lot of opportunities, and I think that's really exciting. I'm wondering about one thing, because I think you touched on it the last time we spoke. Are you seeing a lot of female founders in this space? How is that? How is the gender balance among the founders?
Well, it's and I think we did talk about that last time in mining, and I guess in the energy field. And when I first started in the energy industry, I was one of the only females. And and it was 'cause it's a very engineering field in general. And and especially in the innovation space, I think the statistics are that 2% of women founders are able to, out of all the
Yeah.
funds that come out of the venture side of things, 2% go to women,
Yes.
yet women will deliver. I
Mm.
mean, it's
Yeah,
ama
exactly. I heard the same. Yeah. It's so true.
um, so I'm very much about empowering women and
Mm.
having a voice, and, and that's just collaborations. For the Uplink Challenge we had, or the World Economic Forum program, the first Sustainable Mining Challenge, we had 30% women founders, which is
Mhm.
33%, I believe, which is higher than they've had across their other initiatives.
Mm.
And when I say female founders, like it wasn't even the second, it wasn't their CTO or,
Mm.
a scientist. This was actually female led. So that's incredible. It's not enough, but you know, it's very much that women are needed across
Yes.
many different areas, and including mining. And
Yeah.
there's some amazing global organizations that are supporting women in all, in mining. And it's not just on the field. There's an impact in research in working in automobile industries. So it's many different forms. And so
Mm.
it's about supporting the communities and the ecosystems around that.
Mm. That's good to hear. So I'm wondering, going back to that, what I touched on at the beginning, you being in Singapore now and coming from Houston, and also living in and working in Europe. How has your like Singapore experience shaped the way that you think about innovation and sustainability? Perhaps do you see like a difference from where you come from before?
Yes, because I've walked into a room and said, "Hi, I'm Donna. I'm in mining and metals," and then, like, I've lost the audience. So I've
Yeah.
had to kind of in the past, I've heard, talked about climate first. So having that narrative differently, based on where I am in location. Given the recent geopolitical and all the landscape of and actually the emphasis on critical minerals moving forward and climate adaptation and resilience being very much a focal point, minerals and mining have become a lot more core into the conversations. So, one of the things I've always said is like sustainability at its core is about meeting our needs today, without making it harder for our children, our future
Mm,
generations to meet theirs. It's not a trade off. When we talk about mining, it's about not doing harm for something else that's good.
mm,
So it is about reducing the waste and emissions and minimizing any harm. It doesn't mean stop mining. It's rethinking of how we mine and how we work together. And that boils down to collaboration and action. I think at this moment in time in our inflection point is we can't rely on the government to bail us out. We actually need to work together across sectors, across geographies
mm,
to make what we need in mining and just in our whole world, in our whole, real world systems.
mm.
So, and that's kind of where when I say sustainability, it's very much a core point of not only just my values of what I want my children to look at, to understand where things come from, where, I don't want to leave them a planet that I've done something to make it difficult for them moving
Yeah.
forwards. But I also think it's like thinking about our systems more systemically, that mining touches like everything from climate to
Mm.
geopolitical to the phone in your hand. It's about how everything is worked together, and it's about seeing those connections clearly and making those choices that keep the system resilient, not fragmented, which is sometimes a lot of the bottleneck that's happening in the world.
Mm. But do you think that your job or the work that you do now is easier to do out of Singapore than it would be in like in the States or in Europe for that matter? I'm just curious.
That's a very good question because I think about that quite often because
Mm,
sometimes, I mean, with mining and in energy systems, especially that are deeper supply chains, I also am very conscious on what flights I take, but it's also about the decisions I make as well as a person.
mm,
Um, so I'm oftentimes missing out on some of these conferences of really connecting with people and trying to work together. And it's great that we have these amazing that Zoom and different, that it makes it feels like, but still that tangible of being next to someone sometimes is, often missing.
yeah.
Um, but I do think technology nowadays does help bridge that gap. There's amazing technologies given, and I'm trying to refrain from talking about like some of the areas that don't believe there's climate change and
Mm,
and but yet everyone knows there's climate. We're sitting in places where there's natural disasters and glaciers are melting, and the biodiversity is very fragile, and that's really hard. And but yet there's some amazing innovations that are coming out of the Americas and coming out of Europe,
yeah.
and but yet our systems even in this day and age are so fragmented in
Yes.
many places. And that's where I guess my frustration, and I'm sure it's amongst a lot of others, is we have such an opportunity to make a difference.
Mm.
And we have these amazing conversations, but yet it becomes this chamber.
Mm.
Like
Mm.
we're all talking, but then action doesn't happen.
Mm.
So, and that's where we all need to come together. And that reflects that as an individual, that we all have a voice, and that we can't just rely on a mining company to change it. We can't
Mm.
rely on governments to change things, because we actually need to set that example and bring those bring those partnerships together. So
Mm.
and even with capital, I think that's probably some area that maybe, we had another podcast, is that the amount of capital is needed. We actually need the private sector to really scale.
Mm.
And that's part of a lot of the conversations now, regardless of where you are in the world, because a lot of the funding is not there anymore, and or the funding is needed in scale to really accelerate the needs that we need in terms of technology, innovation, and climate itself. So our energy
Mm.
systems, I mean, if you even take out the climate side of things, just our energy systems, having clean water, having electricity. There's so many places that don't even have that, and the conversation sometimes and the awareness is missing. And so I think that's given me a good perspective, in terms of my, I've been abroad over half my life now, which is really scary thinking about that. My children, they think they're Singaporean, yet they carry an American passport, a New Zealand
Mm.
passport, and but they're exposed to so many different cultures and so much, but
Mm.
the most exciting thing, I mean, about going back to visit my family this summer is actually taking them to a battery recycling plant. Like,
Yeah.
how cool is that? Like, I want actually them to take them to a place where they can actually see what mommy does, what
Yes.
what I'm talking about. Even being in the finance industry, like working for a bank, I wanted some of the traders to actually see what a coal pile is, to
True.
see what's, because
Yeah.
when you don't see it, it's just another number. But when you see societies that don't have electricity or
Mm.
clean water, or what copper looks like, it's very hard to relate to.
Mm.
So it's, creating that awareness. So yes, I'm excited about taking them to a battery recycling
Mhm.
plant. You know,
That's so very exciting. But I think what I'm thinking is that your perspective, both like as a bridge builder in a way, because you both have this global perspective, having both like the U.S. perspective, Europe, and then Asia, and then you also have this perspective from different industries and oil and gas, finance, sustainable mining, and that I think is so valuable because as you said, it's so fragmented and it's so siloed often. So we need the people who has kind of seen it from different angles. I think that's really valuable.
we can learn so much from the past,
Yes,
and I mean, we don't necessarily always need to reinvent the wheel, but we also need to learn, and we can adapt. A solution that we have in one area may not work somewhere else. As I said, with like some of the supply chains, it's very the processing, the different ways of extraction. Um, you look at some of the technologies, yet they don't have power to get there. So how are they powering it right now? With
mm,
coal.
mm,
So how do you find these modular solutions that actually can, with long duration, energy storage systems, batteries that actually could power it in a clean way? So
mm,
there's a lot of different ways we can learn from each other. I actually, the conversations I think I get the most more energy out of is outside the mining industry sometimes, because it's actually having that like-minded that alignment with different, and shows how connected we are
yeah,
as individuals, how systems, and that connection and that awareness, and that actually opportunity to really bridge what we can build together.
yes.
That collective action is, I think, is incredible what we had that opportunity. Um, so
Yeah. I'm really curious about this because I come from oil and gas myself. I have this geoscientist background, know a lot of other geoscientists, and I'm also always looking for, okay, so if people move out of oil and gas, and like at some point it is a sunset industry, is that what we call it? Like it will it's a transition, but it will get smaller. So I'm looking for ways that people can use their skills and knowledge and background in different ways. And I think that geoscientists, for instance, would have a big future in sustainable mining. So what would you say to people who want to be part of this, or like learn more about sustainable mining, and where can they kind of find their place?
I think everyone has a role, can play a role, whether it's going to be in the narrative and marketing. Actually,
Mm,
that's a field that I think is so underrepresented and so much needed, in terms of changing the perspectives, actually bridging the gap of bringing different people and different stakeholders involved and reshaping the narrative. I think that's a very
mm,
much scientists definitely, I believe that that's very much, with a transition is not an end. It's always our world is changing. Our
mhm,
children's world will change, and there'll be more solutions that'll come, fusion, and there's hydrogen, there's so many different solutions coming out, and it's amazing. But the t- time to scale and the time involved to really actually make sure that it's not doing any other further damage.
yes, yeah,
That's it's not going to happen overnight, and it's not just stopping with something. So I
mm,
believe that there's many different organizations out there. There's many different groups now: sustainable women, women in climate. Not to dissuade any of your male listeners, I'm a part of Women in Mining and Resources in Singapore, and I believe there's 30 last year was about 30 something percent, 30% men. And the same thing, I'm in a carbon group, and it's those conversations. So it's always, one of the things I had interns last summer, and, especially in Singapore, where they don't know what mining is and put them on the spot. Tell me what mining is. I've never seen so many people with so many, students with white faces just
yeah,
saying, put on the spot, but challenging, every voice is needed, whether
mm,
you've been in an industry for 20 years or whether you've been in it for 2 minutes. We need different perspectives and different ideas to really surface. So
mm.
whether it's through school or through the industry you're in, through different organizations, I mean, that's what's amazing about our global world. We're connected in some way or form.
Yeah, exactly. And as you mentioned, there's so many networks and places that you can find people, and it's just when you I just had this experience myself. When you start looking, you kind of, oh, where were all these people? I didn't know they existed. So it's just when you start to scratch, you find so many groups and
You know
interesting
what?
places.
Absolutely. And one of the things, like, and Holly's really opened my eyes is impact measurement.
Yeah.
That's I mean, she's fantastic sorts, but to understand impact measurement, because when you're talking about early stage technologies,
Mm,
they've got a roadmap that they think may happen. There's so much different variables and different strategies that are needed to actually evolve. But so really how to put in some measurements out there to create awareness and have that framework. And so that's
mm.
been, a different side of it. I'm trying to learn just for a better awareness as well. I'm always learning. I think that, as in our journey in life,
Yes,
things are changing, and
absolutely. Yeah, and it makes it a lot more exciting as well.
I just think it's about connecting the dots across the chain
Yeah.
to have this huge map, and how we can actually how we have all have in common, right? Reducing water and energy and chemical use, cutting costs, but cost, doesn't have to come as a trade-off. A lot of the conversation, and especially in the, I guess, in the private sector and public private sector, is that the conversation doesn't need to be only for good. It's
Mm,
profit for good.
mm, mm.
And that's it's okay to make a financial
Yes.
return.
Yeah.
And that's very much now, even with the startups now, to get the funding,
Yeah.
you have to have these incentives, and
Mm,
and also that, and how do you entice, actually, and then how do you entice the private sector involved into it? So that's also needs to come from the public, from the
mm.
government, and incentives as well. So there's a lot of different variables that, and so I'm always like mapping out. You see my room back here, and I have this, like, all these post-its.
No,
Actually,
yeah.
Holly and I is actually, okay, so how can we do this? And, and who am I missing on this side? I was at a mining conference yesterday, and I was like, I have this startup that has this amazing technology. I have no financial implication involved in this. I just think it's an amazing one. They just need the right voices involved,
Mm.
and they need the right support. So for me, it's very much about the connections and bridging those opportunities. And so I think that's where everyone has a role to play in
Yes.
whatever, regardless of, industry or sector. I think that's very important. And no role is not, no role should not be undervalued. We all,
Mm.
all are a piece of the puzzle.
Mm. Absolutely. So speaking of connections, if people now want to learn more about this or connect with you, what's the easiest way to get in touch with you?
I can give you my phone number, but
Yeah.
LinkedIn is always great. Or reach out through LinkedIn or through any of the organizations within Singapore.
Mm.
I'm always learning, so I'd love to hear any kind of, opportunities that whether you're working on as an innovation or different ideas of how to actually integrate more collaboration. Um, so that's or just really have some food for thought, in what
Yeah.
you're seeing in a different industry. The world is always evolving, and there's so much opportunity.
Thank you so much, Donna, for being one of those bridge builders between where we are and where we need to go. I think it's such an important topic. So thank you so much for sharing your journey and the work that you do, and best of luck with everything.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
I hope this conversation gave you a fresh lens on a topic that's often overlooked or misunderstood. What I take with me is the idea that progress doesn't always look like something new. Sometimes it's about doing something old in a radically better way. As always, you will find all the interesting connection points and links listed in the show notes. And to find out more about this podcast or other work I'm doing, check out storiesforthefuture.com or go to my Substack at viklavenes.substack.com. Among other things there, I've got a really interesting future scenario generator that I've created, and I would really like you to test it out. You'll find it on my Substack. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, take care.